Hi, Tahsan. Let's take a look at this new set of essays. We've got the car sales. Let's see what you wrote. The bar chart illustrates the car sales of 3 brands in 9 European countries in 2018. At first glance, the highest number of cars was sold in Hungary. On the other hand, in Belgium, the number was the least. All right, I like this a lot. You definitely picked the right information to include in your overview, but the one thing that's wrong is your use of on the other hand. On the other hand is one of those expressions that you can only use if you've already used on the one hand. You see, these two go together. So it's not appropriate to use just one without the other. So I would not have written on the other hand. One expression that's really good in this kind of situation is in contrast. That would have worked really well here. So at first glance, the highest number of cars was sold in Hungary. In contrast, in Belgium, the number was the least. Okay, let's move on. In France, more than 100 BMW cars were sold, whereas in the UK and Italy, the number was below 100. Both in Germany and Hungary, people bought almost the same numbers of cars like France. About 90 cars were sold in both Holland and Poland. In Belgium, only 10 cars approximately were sold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so the nice thing here is that you have made an attempt to include every single country, and that is important. You do and you should have to mention the name of each country at least once because those are your categories, and it's important to know what those categories are. So yes, I approve of that. However, this paragraph has some problems. Let me tell you a little bit about what the problems are. First of all, your numbers are inaccurate. It's not 100 cars, it's 100,000. That's what this means here. So right away, this makes your data inaccurate. I encourage you to look at the band descriptors for task 1 and see what happens when your data is inaccurate. You're going to see that it lowers your task achievement score to a pretty low level. So keep that in mind and make sure you absolutely understand what the data is, what the numbers are. So that's one thing. There's another problem with this, but you know what? I kind of want to read the rest of the task first, and then I'll get into what that issue is. About 20 Audi cars more were sold in Hungary compared to Germany, where almost 100 cars were sold. In Hungary, the number of car sales of the Audi was equal to the BMW. In the UK and Italy, the number of car sales was slightly different, 15 and 20 respectively. Almost 80 cars sold both in France and Poland. That's not a full sentence, it's a fragment. Oh wait, almost 80 cars were sold. Sorry, you're right. I was wrong. Around 30 cars were sold in Holland, 10 cars more than Italy. Okay, let's keep going. In Hungary, 120 Ford cars were sold, which was slightly greater than that of Holland. France and UK bought equal number of cars. Likewise, Germany and Italy and Germany bought 20 cars. 70 cars were sold. Okay, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So now I can tell you what the issue is with this task 1. Maybe this is your first attempt at a task 1, but I think it's important that we talk about a few things here. As far as your word count is concerned, I was a little worried about it when I saw it, but it's okay. It's 212 words. Ideally, it would have been maximum around 200. Okay, that's generally a good place to be. So this way, it allows you to have maybe some more advanced grammar, some more interesting sentence structures, some comparison. Of course, you could do it in less. But if you got up to that point, I would have said, okay, that's, within an acceptable range. So it was a little too much here. But that's not the only problem. The problem is you kind of missed something here. And let me tell you what that is. So this is a stacked bar chart. And what that means is that what we're concerned about is the total number of cars sold. All right, so we're really interested in this 400,000, this 300,000, this less than 100,000, and so forth and so forth. Then, secondary to that is what made up those numbers. So we're really interested in the fact that that 400,000 was made up equally of those 3 car brands. We're super interested in the fact that that 90,000 or so was almost entirely made up of Ford sales. Okay, so this is something you missed. You didn't talk about the totals at all, and it's very important to do so. So I would have spent an entire paragraph talking just about the totals. Now, the other thing about task 1 that I want you to know is that what's important in task 1 is not just what information you include, but also what information you choose not to include. You see, there are some pieces of information in this bar chart that are really not particularly interesting and not particularly useful. This bar chart has 36 pieces of information. So you've got the 3 car brands times 9, and then you have that total score that I talked about. So you've got 36 pieces of information. You should not, and you probably cannot, write them all. Okay? So what you need to show the examiner is that you understand how to select the appropriate information. And that's a really, really key component of task 1. So what would I use as the key information? Well, the first thing I would do is I would talk about this high. Absolutely, I would start there. I'd start talking about Hungary having the highest number of car sales of the 9 countries. And I would say what that figure is at just under 400,000. It was followed by France at just over 300,000 cars sold. In contrast, the fewest cars sold were found in Belgium at under 100,000, and just over 100,000 cars were sold by Italy. The remaining countries all sold between 200,000 and 200 and, I don't know, 60,000, 70,000, whatever you think that number is. And then you're done with that. Then you go on to your details. And in the next paragraph, what I recommend is talking about the car companies. Again, selecting which points are worth mentioning. So I would probably start with BMW, and I would make a nice, really kind of comprehensive statement. I would say that in all 9 countries, BMW sold approximately 100,000 cars. You see, that's why this number here, these numbers along the side, they're so useful. They sold approximately 100,000 cars, except for Belgium, which sold a negligible amount. Okay, and then you're done with BMW. Amazing, right? In one sentence, you could be done with it. And then I would do something similar with Ford and Audi. So for Ford, I would do some different things. I would say that Hungary and Holland sold an equal number. The fewest cars were sold in Germany and Italy. And then again, I would give you a range of what those middle countries are. And that's more than enough information. And I would do something similar with Audi. Okay, so this is how you want to treat these charts that have a lot of information. It's about grouping. It's about creating ranges of numbers. So saying that they were, for example, Ford, the numbers were between 50 and 80,000, if that's the case. So giving that kind of information, but not going too much into detail, which is what I think you did. You went into a ton of detail. I mean, this paragraph about BMW included all 9 countries, and then each of your other paragraphs had at least 7 pieces of information. So it's just too much detail, and that shows an inability to select and report on key pieces here. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to your task 2 about problems of pollution, okay? Nowadays, by the way, nowadays is one word. You don't need those hyphens. Nowadays, problems with pollution are getting worse, especially in large cities. There are many key factors for this, such as using vehicles, production of mills and factories, and dropping waste here and there. I'm not crazy about this expression, dropping waste here and there. It feels very conversational and certainly doesn't feel appropriate to an essay. So a better way of phrasing this would be an inappropriate disposal of waste. Okay? So that's how I would write that. These, These, because it's plural, these problems can only be solved by reducing the number of vehicles, setting up dustbins, and creating rules for the construction of mills and factories. You have to be careful with your lists. You need an and here, you need an and here. You didn't have one in either place. Let's keep going. Many people live in large cities. They need many transports to reach their destination. These vehicles are creating air and sound pollution by emitting harmful gases into the air and using horn frequently. In addition, there are many mills and factories in the city which emit carbon dioxide into the air and dump industrial waste in the water. As a result, people are getting affected with harmful diseases. For instance, in Dhaka, a great number of vehicles run on the street. Additionally, not besides, there are many mills and factories. All these are causing pollution and making people suffer from various diseases. In large cities, many people inhabit a small area, no inn, and they drop litter everywhere and thus make their environment unhygienic, which makes them suffer from many health problems. Okay, let's see. I started correcting around in the middle of the paragraph, so let me go back and correct some of the beginning. I didn't really love the fact that you had these two short little sentences here. I would have preferred to see them kind of more fluently combined in some way. So how about this? Many people who live in large cities, no, let's try it a little differently. Many people live in large cities and need modes of transport to reach their destination. That's one way you could have done it. Or many of the people who live in large cities must use different forms of transport to reach their destination. So those are just a couple of options for how you could have written this first sentence. And you just combine it in a more advanced way. Okay, you didn't mean this. This was a little strange. Creating air and sound pollution by emitting harmful gases into the air and using their horn. Yeah, it's something, not just using horn. Which emit and dump, that's fine. As a result, comma. Now, check this out. You started talking about sound pollution, but you don't really get affected with something from sound pollution. So maybe you shouldn't have even included that, right? Now, for instance, in Dhaka, a great number of vehicles are running in the street or run on the street. Now, how is that a for instance for this? So I didn't really think that these connected particularly well together. You're talking about a number of people getting sick. So rather than talking about the number of vehicles on the street, what you should have been saying is a recent report from Dhaka General Hospital found that 70% of the respiratory diseases in the hospital were the result of air pollution. So that would have made sense, okay? Showing this link between pollution in the city and people getting affected with diseases, okay? And then additionally, there are many mills and factories. All of these well, I guess that's all right. All of these are causing pollution and making people suffer. Again, you're talking about diseases. Um, but your proof here is a little better. So it's a little too similar. Maybe you could have done something else. Maybe you could have, so yeah, here you were talking about harmful diseases, here harmful diseases. I'm wondering if you could have said something else. Maybe you could have talked about like what this means for our food. So, you know, the soil is being harmed, and so everybody eating it, from animals to people, um, are getting ill, or I don't know. I just felt like there was a little bit of repetition here. You know, you were talking about harmful diseases, and then here again, health problems. So I'm wondering if maybe you could have said something else. Okay. In order to mitigate the problems, government has to regulate transports on the street. No, forms of transport or modes of transport. Encouraging people to use public transport can decrease the number of vehicles. Yet, because we really shouldn't start sentences with but, yet, comma, to do that, the improvement of the transportation system is required so that people can feel safe while using it. Not public transports again. I don't think that this idea is particularly helpful. This is not about the safety of public transport, but about what good methods of solving this problem are. So this is actually going off into a different direction, and I wouldn't have included it at all. So encouraging people to use public transport can decrease the number of vehicles. Then, instead of saying this, I would have said, this will lessen the carbon dioxide emissions into the environment, increasing overall health. Okay? That works better. That is more cohesive. Strict laws and regulations are needed to stop constructing mills and factories near houses, hospitals, and schools. We have to set up dustbins. Okay, so what would that do? Explain it. You're just giving me a list now. We have to set up, okay, here, give me some sort of a link here. So furthermore, or lastly, we have to set up dustbins labeling types of waste in each living area to ensure a clean environment. Now, tell me how that would help. When you have a problem and solution essay, this is a really, really common kind of thing that people fall into. They write the solutions, but they don't explain how the solutions are solutions. And that will not help your task achievement score. Just like your problems, your solutions have to be well structured and they have to be well supported. So it's not enough to just come up with solutions, but to also explain how your solutions help solve the problem. So that's what you needed here. You needed it here, and then you needed it here. And then, like I said before, I didn't feel like this was relevant at all, this sentence here. So get rid of this and add a sentence here and here. In conclusion, problems associated with pollution are becoming a headache for us since pollution is increasing day by day, especially in large developed cities. Now, you should have avoided using pollution twice in the same sentence. There are other ways to create cohesion, or, you know, use a different word altogether. You could have just used it, since it is increasing day by day. Okay? Because of emission from vehicles, mills, and factories, discarding waste in, let's see. All right, let's change this around. As a result of emissions from vehicles, mills, and factories, as well as disposal of waste in inappropriate places, people are suffering from diseases. To solve the issues, comma, draconian measures should be taken to regulate vehicles, construct mills and factories in suitable places, and set up dustbins in living areas. Okay. So at this point, Tahsan, you should have a good idea about what some of your consistent grammar mistakes are. I did see that there were some that happened over and over again, so be aware of them and try to revise them as soon as you can. Other things that we talked about, like task achievement. On the whole, I thought you did a nice job, but there's work to do. So go ahead, correct these, return them to us along with your next set of essays. Don't forget to keep adding to your error correction list, okay? Good job, and I'll wait for your next set.